The useful point of the video, and hopefully something you might be able to gain some value from. If you're going to make an 8-shot revolver, you'll need to make the cylinder or drum magazine 3.946 times the largest diameter of whatever it is you're going to be chambering in it. For instance, in the case of a 22 caliber long rifle, its rim diameter, which is the part that you hit because it's rimfire, is 7.1 millimeter or 0.278 inches. The base of it, the actual part that contains the majority of the body of the cartridge, and also very similar to the bullet diameter, is 5.7. But the real diameter you want to work with is approximately almost 4 times the size. For a lot of wiggle room and the ability to have some slop factor, and making sure that you have plenty of metal around the cartridge that is inside of this acting as a chamber, you should make it 4 times the diameter. But the bare minimum may be around 3.9 to 3.95 real diameter. Now, the way I did this is a specific methodology that involves extremely hardcore mathematics, science, calculus, wizardry, the sorting hat. No, actually it isn't. What I did was I drew a big circle. I counted the number of pixels, and it was 296 in this case, from here to here. Then I figured out how many circles, I figured out how to put 8 of them in the middle by doing this. I made an X, which turned out to be thinner, and then I made a plus sign across it, so it would divide it evenly into 8 spaces. This created, now try to concentrate on this part, it created these triangular shaped pizza pieces. Stop thinking about pizzas. And what I did was, I didn't do any calculations of any kind. I didn't run a supercomputer. I literally kept drawing circles that were perfectly circular until they were almost but not quite fill in the entire space, so there was literally no room left. Okay? I didn't even do it a certain number of pixels. I just made it to where it would fill this up, and then I measured from the edge for the diameter. Then I made 2 or 3 extra ones over here that were slightly smaller and slightly larger than that by, let's say, a pixel each for like 2 different combinations, and then copied and pasted them into here transparently to see which one would fill it up the most. This is part of the packing problem thing. Like if you're trying to pack a certain number of marbles in a box or something, this would be an example of trying to make a very efficient packing system. Now, for those of you who aren't aware of it, if you do a 6-shot revolver, it's very simple because you have a cylinder over here and a cylinder over here, and the way they configure, you end up with a space in the middle that's the same size as one of the cylinders. It does the honeycomb method, which is why a 6-shot revolver is very common. It has nothing to do with the capacity. It has to do with the fact that it's just easier to drill the damn thing. Anyway, in case you didn't notice here, one of the things you might notice if you stare at it long enough, if you put 8 cylinders in here, or excuse me, chambers, you end up with these 2 lining up straight up and down, this one left to right, and same thing down here, and this one's also up and down. So this effectively makes a square over the top of this, and it has this spot right here, suspiciously, around here, that's where you would have a square that would touch. Now, that isn't a good way for me to mathematically figure it out, so I tried a bunch of other combinations, and I just said to hell with it and just started drawing shit in paint. I know that sounds like a letdown, but I didn't do any high-tech wizardry. I just did trial and error. Now, what did this come up with? Again, really, basically, whatever the maximum diameter of the object is, make a container 4 times the size of it at each dimension, which means you should have 16 times the surface area. And then you will end, or whatever the hell, I don't even know, but you'll end up with something that will fit. Now, the thing about this is, you might want to try a combination where you make it mechanically as small as possible, just for sake of argument. Let's say we made it to where it was just paper thin right here at what would be the base dimension diameter, which is really the actual chamber in here for the cartridge. That means you would have the edge of a 22 caliber revolver having its primers sitting out here where you could hit them on the outside of your cylinder. And yes, there is a gun like that. It operates like a pin fire, but you put in 22 caliber rim fire, and it just hits it with a pin fire. Pinfires used to have a little needle that would go into the cartridge, into the center, and then hit the primer. Yeah, that actually existed. So one of the conversions, this is where I got the idea from, was to dead ass just put in an undersized cylinder, or at least on the back anyway, it had a notch cut into it, to where you could hit it with a hammer on the outside so you could convert older revolvers because, and this is very important, if you can find a revolver cylinder that just mechanically will cram into a gun, you can just change it out. And this isn't an evidence of a segue. But anyway, again, if you were trying to make a 3-shot, 5-shot, 7-shot, or 8-shot or 6-shot cylinder, there's supposed to be a math ratio that comes up, and yes, you can do it by calculation. But again, what I do is I brute force it by just trial and error. Let's draw circles in Microsoft Paint. Yes, that's literally how I engineer things. But anyway, and if you're curious, you can make something like this that will have that notch if you want to. But anyway, let's go on to the secondary or primary subject. Now, this is an addendum to previous videos where I've talked about engineering this particular problem away. A license isn't normally required to purchase a blank firing replica gun, like the now under $30 Italian Bruna Bruni Company BBM Olympic 6 zinc alloy, aka pot metal frame, 8-shot single or double action blank firing revolver that usually fires Flobert Acorn crimp blank ammunition that's really, really short. They're really, really tiny. They're like a 1/4 inch long. It is readily convertible to, however, a cheap version of the very expensive starter pistols and dog training guns and theatrical props out there, because you can just take some, I'm not kidding, you can put putty on them and make it look like a different gun, or just use it for something that people want to charge you, no joke, $120 to buy. It's a freaking cap gun, okay? It can't readily be converted to firing blanks that are used for driving nails. Nail gun blanks aren't a good idea. Now, I want to point out an example of something. The 38 caliber version of this, otherwise known as 9mm or 388, Bruni Olympic, was previously legal as a blank firing revolver in the United Kingdom because of sports clubs, hunting dog trainers, schools, school theatrical groups, and citizens. But because of its misuse by criminals in 2009, tests were carried out to assess how hard it would really be to convert one, and it consisted of drilling out the barrel or swapping it, because it had a barrel you could pull out at one time, and or drilling out the cylinder. At least this is the assertion by the United Kingdom. Importation into the United Kingdom was banned in 2011. Now, this is a cautionary tale. Also, this included a 5-year mandatory prison sentence. It's a cautionary tale because converting weapons makes them illegal because, in effect, they are effectively been converted. It only needs evidence of it being done. In the United States, converting a blank firing replica or even flare guns is extremely restricted or prohibited. Restricted means that you have to follow certain rules, and even then it may be prohibited in the area you're in. So I'm warning you, don't do this. And I'm not joking about it. It's not me wink, wink, nudge, nudging. Don't do this. However, as evidenced by the previous thing here, copying the design of a gun made in zinc, which is an easily meltable alloy, and making it out of something much more durable would, in the United States anyway, be completely legal and maybe a good way to do it. It's kind of silly for me to say it, but you might actually do a better job making a safe gun by copying a toy, because it's designed to handle blanks being fired, and sometimes blanks are pretty freaking powerful. It also has a bore obstruction because the newer ones block off the barrel, so it could actually have higher pressure and more wearing out factor. So making it out of steel by copying it verbatim might be a good first project. I wholeheartedly recommend you do this in plastic first, because if you do it in plastic, you end up with a lower likelihood of making bad design decisions. You don't actually use it in that condition, but you can design it that way. And it's just easier on you. It's less stress. And then you can use the plastic design to make molds and make a copy if you want to, because, like virtually every revolver on the planet, most of the patents have expired. Okay? And again, it's only $30 to buy the little 22 one. Anyway, and you can scale things up, you know. Like I said, on the other page here, you just scale it up, like just do 4-to-1 as a rounding off number and be done with it, right? Okay, continue. And by the way, a 6-shooter, it's triple the diameter of the cartridge. Anyway, here we go. Now, what happened that year that might have spurred this on? Mark Duggan was shot to death by armed police in North London in 2011 because they suspected of him planning an attack. And after this, I got to point out, the police department changed their story repeatedly, and the media changed what the story was within their own stories, contradicting themselves because they were getting so much conflicting or bullshit stories from officials. And again, the claim is it was justified because he was armed, but later what they found was a BBM Bruni Model 92 blank firing replica. It's a replica of a Beretta 92, a semi-automatic weapon. But that wasn't banned. No, actually it wasn't. It literally was dead ass not banned. They banned the revolvers because they were easily converted. The semi-auto Beretta knockoffs that you can get that are called pack guns could actually fire real cartridges. You just had to modify the cartridge, which is illegal, obviously, for many areas. But anyway, where was this gun found? In a sock in the grassland nearby, right where anybody could throw it, with no forensics leading back to the person shooting it, or if it was shot at all. And the only person they could find a reference to try to connect him to it was a drug dealer who claimed he'd been beaten with the damn thing. That's why his DNA was on it. But again, in the same articles on the newspapers and even in the police reports, they changed that story several times. Some characteristics were changed 24 times. Anyway, there isn't any forensic evidence that the gun was involved, and it's not like anybody was panicking to get rid of these guns or something. And yeah, they were used in criminal activity because I'll show you a little bit of data about it. So that is the cylinder for it. Now I want to point out something about a cylinder in a revolver. Sometimes they're referred to as being drum magazines. It's because they're really easily changed. So instead of drilling the damn thing, what people really did was just buy a completely street legal cylinder for a 22 caliber pistol that was 8-shot and just shove it in the damn thing. No, I'm not kidding. Because the blanks are the same size, it didn't need to be drilled. So the only thing left was to, quote unquote, drill the barrel, which is pretty difficult because they stick metal in it like they do in this one. This one has a metal shield in it. But criminals sometimes just drilled out the shield or just bought readily available cylinders that matched it. No, I'm not kidding. They would buy them through the internet because they could get them shipped in plain brown wrappers. That's really how they did it. That was a little cottage business in the United Kingdom. Also, the barrel, if you're not aware of it, some of the older versions of the manual for getting parts for it showed that you could pull the damn thing out. It was just pressed in. It was not required that you drill it. Anywho, oh look. Now this is the later version of it. This is the number 6, the 22, and it has an integral barrel, but it's made out of zinc. It has metal parts in it to keep you from drilling through it. But you can see on it, if you get a hold of one and clean it off the ink, paint, or whatever, where the parts are in it because they show up. You can also use a magnet to find them because they put real steel in there instead of a non-magnetic steel. So you could drill into them on both sides and drive them out. They were pins in many cases. Yeah, it's not like I looked this up on 100 freaking forums in the United Kingdom. So anyway, that's actually from a website that provides you parts, but they won't provide you the body of the gun because that's a no-no. But the spare parts are available. And this is the Olympic 38. Again, this isn't a semi-automatic weapon. And right there you can see, oh look, there's a little divot there. And there's all the parts for it. And it's an integral barrel, right? Well, half of them are and half of them aren't. Now, let's get to this. I'm not encouraging people to convert these for a simple reason. It's a very bad idea. I am, however, encouraging people that want to learn about revolvers to skip looking up diagrams and physically get a hold of a toy revolver. A cap gun made of plastic can teach you more than a damn diagram or a patent anywhere. And this thing, being at 20 some odd dollars or 30, might be the cheapest alternative if you want to start learning about this. And again, in many jurisdictions, including the one I'm in, it's not illegal to make a copy of a gun because the patents are all outdated, because there's no restrictions on making one in my state or country. Or maybe, just maybe, you want to learn how they work. And again, you can make it in plastic, so it's completely legal everywhere, unless you're in Britain, apparently. Anyway, again, if you're doing an 8-shot, it's basically a 4-to-1 ratio if you want to have enough metal around every cartridge. And then you draw this X pattern, rotate it 45, and draw it again, and then you find a happy medium spot in there very carefully and figure out where you want it, set your drill press, and then rotate it on the center of it and just drill exactly the same pattern so that it has the same defect consistently when each of these cylinders comes up to the top dead center firing position. Thanks for watching. Have a good day and good luck with all of that.